John, many Americans hear the term Brexit, but don't really know what it means. So can you briefly but concisely explain Brexit, where it stands, and what Theresa May delaying the vote means?
Well, John, the European Union is a group of 27 countries that was founded by people who were globalists and socialist progressive globalists. And they wanted to create a superstate. But in the initial stages, they sold it as merely a free customs area. And Britain joined, was sucked in, and even I voted for it to go into a free customs area. That was free trade, and that was wonderful. But soon, in a few years, it began to emerge that what the real design was to create a superstate and to do away with all those 27 nations, including the United Kingdom, by dividing them into regions. In other words, England would have 8 regions, Scotland would be 1, Northern Ireland 1, and Wales 1. England and Great Britain would be divided into 11 regions, each reporting directly to Brussels, to the European government. And so the British Parliament would be bypassed, and we would lose our own democracy and be part of this gigantic group with 1/27th of the vote. And our legal system, which has a jury system and has habeas corpus and things like that, would be abandoned. We would have to go to the Napoleonic Code, where the onus of proof is on, once you're accused, to prove that you are innocent, rather than on the accuser having to prove that you're guilty. These fundamental things, and our democracy would have gone, because the European Union, more correctly, should be called the Euro-Soviet, because, like the Soviet Russia, it elects a parliament democratically, but then gives that parliament no effective power. It's run, like the Politburo, by an appointed, not elected, but an appointed commission and president. And also, of course, its courts are heavily political. The Court of Justice in Europe has just this last week announced that the Article 50 can be overruled by the European Union, and they can abandon it, which was not in the rules before. And of course, there's enormous financial corruption. The accounts of the European Union have not been signed by their accountants for over 20 years. If that was a company, you'd be in jail after 2 years. So it's really a huge Soviet-type union, and Britain's interest believes in free trade, freedom, a justice system similar, of course. The American justice system was developed from the British with the onus of proof and things like that, a jury system, habeas corpus, all those vitally important things retained. But it's proved very difficult to get out. And May is supposedly trying to get out. She was a Remainer. In other words, she wanted to stay in the European Union.
Right.
And of course, when she was Home Secretary, she allowed a huge influx, a covert influx of immigrants, all part of the globalist elite philosophy, as it is in America now. Those that are opposing President Trump want open borders. The globalist elite wants open borders in Europe.
John, let me ask you about that, actually, because you touch on a very interesting point and a place I wanted to go. Even if Brexit is stalled in the UK, we're seeing these, what are being called the yellow vest riots in Paris. We see nationalism taking hold in places like Poland in an extreme way. Ultimately, is it inevitable that Europeans, the European people, are going to want to exit the EU and that this movement will spread?
It's a race to the finishing tape, really, because once the European Union, as Chancellor Merkel said very quickly a few weeks ago, we're going to have a European army and a European police force. Now, as the Romans did, they didn't have British Roman soldiers in the Roman army keeping in Britain. They had moved the British to other countries, and probably
Right.
They had German soldiers in the ones in Germany, in England, so that you're more akin or more able to keep down with force. Firing on your own people would be difficult, but firing on foreigners is sort of easier. And so with a European police force, with German police and French police in Britain, what chance does Britain have of revolting or rebelling against that power? And that's going to happen all over Europe. And so it's a race because they haven't yet got their own army and their own police force together. And if these people try to break away now, it would mean the dissolution of the European Union, an enormous shock to the world, because the euro is now the second currency in the world. So that would be a huge financial shock. Plus, it's 550 million people with 20% of world trade. And so Britain, which was the first to dare to ask to leave, and therefore is paying a fine of some $70 billion for daring to ask, and if it was successful, other people, as you mentioned, Italy, people in France who are getting fed up, people in Germany who are getting upset, people in Poland, in Hungary, and in Greece, all these people would start to say, well, if Britain can do it, so can we. But if they crush Britain and make it really suffer for it, then they will say, the European Union will say to them, you watch. You see what happened to Britain when that dared to go, and that was the second largest economy in Europe and the second largest contributor. See how they suffered for even daring to ask. So it's a race to the finishing tape, and it depends whether the grassroots feeling of people, of real people, comes out to the fore or is allowed to come out to the fore before the European Union finishes its iron grasp around the necks of everyone in the European Union, which is now more and more called the Euro-Soviet.
All right, John, let me ask you this last question. Do you think we're seeing the unrest in Europe among the European people, among people in Britain, among those in France, among those in Italy, Poland, the countries you mentioned, because of Donald Trump and the rise of populism in the United States? And whether that be the case or not, what would Brexit, whether it happens or doesn't happen, mean for the United States, both if it happens and if it doesn't? What's the impact on the United States?
Well, first of all, I think it's not because of the rising in European Union, it's because people are feeling this grotesque, unelected power of the central power of European Union is offensive to them, and they're beginning to feel that and realize we want to get out. And it's growing, and it's a populist movement taking different forms in different countries. Germany, it's the big, huge rise in the far-right party, Alternative for Deutschland. In France, you've got the Yellow Vests and so on. And I think it's not because of President Trump, but President Trump's ideals are certainly a beacon held out across the water to which the populist people look and are thrilled to have. Now, you ask about Britain, what effect it will have on America. Surely, if the European Union goes totally Soviet, it's going to be really increasingly alien to the United States. But the most important immediate thing is if Britain fails to get out of the European Union soon, America will lose its most fervent and its most powerful militarily and even economically very powerful ally. And that will gone because Britain will have gone. There will be 11 regions reporting directly to Brussels, and to all intents and purposes, it's the end of Great Britain. And it will progressively be the end of other countries as they come under the same sort of aegis. So it's a very, very serious situation with enormous impact on people around the world, not just in Europe.
John, thank you very much for your time and insights today.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and great videos, click over here to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.